felt need. It wasn't just a commercial ploy.
Well, I think it was a really mixed legacy for Springsteen, from what he has said and what others have said about it. It was a real double-edged sword, because on the one hand, it got him a lot of attention that he otherwise wouldn't have gotten, and that the singer-songwriter sort of label allowed his songwriting, and also Springsteen's sort of, you know, very much autonomous, control-centered approach in the early part of his career, really allowed that to flower. The downside of that was that it burdened him with a lot of expectations that he had trouble meeting, and it obscured his real musical roots.
Despite protests from CBS and Mike Appel, Springsteen refused to go solo with the album, and he called on friends Vinny Lopes and Gary Talent to help him out.
No, they didn't want us, but Bruce insisted on having, like, because he knew I knew the songs, Gary knew the songs, we'd play the songs, so, you know, went easier that way. When we got in the studio, it only took a week, you know. Didn't take a long time to do that record. Once we started doing the, once Bruce called, because I wasn't in the band, there was no band once that Bruce Springsteen band broke up. I was working in a boatyard. And Bruce called me up and he says, listen, I'm signing with CBS, do you want to do an album? And I said, sure. And then we started rehearsing, and then when we were in the process of rehearsing for the album is when I met Mike and Jimmy Creticus. And right off the bat, I really didn't like him.
Overcoming personal and creative differences, Bruce and the band travelled to New York in June 1972 to record Springsteen's debut album. Released the following year, Greetings from Asbury Park was a technically flawed but intriguing introduction to the world of Bruce Springsteen, bringing him to the attention of many respected journalists.
I became aware of him with the release of the first album, Greetings from Asbury Park. It was a notable record that I thought was a little excessive, and I still do. It's a young record, but a record of somebody who clearly had a lot of talent.
I remember not being particularly impressed with Greetings from Asbury Park. I mean, it was, you know, it's okay, but there were a lot of good albums around at that time. You know, there was a real a glut. You know, if you like singer-songwriters, it was a good time to be liking them. So I don't remember Greetings from Asbury Park standing out particularly. I don't remember people sort of saying, oh, you know, I've seen the future of rock and roll, his name is Bruce Springsteen. It was sort of, have you heard Greetings from Asbury Park? Yeah, it's good, yeah. And so it was just, it was sort of there bubbling away, promising debut, could do better, I think, was about the sort of general perception.
Well, I think Springsteen himself has always had reservations about that record. I mean, he didn't like the way it was produced, for example, and I don't think it is a terribly well-produced record. I think it was an important landmark for him in that it established certain things that would be recurrent on subsequent records. I mean, certainly the sort of dense wordplay, the sort of playfulness, the sort of R&B sound on some of this stuff. You know, these are all sort of durable legacies. But you know, one of the things I think that makes Springsteen exciting for those of us who have followed his career is we all know artists who, in some sense, their best step is their first step. You know, that they've distilled, you know, many years worth of material into that sort of debut record. For Springsteen, I think Greetings was a kind of a way station. It was not, its primary value was in the way in which it sort of hinted at things to come, or sketched at stuff that would find fuller fruition later.
Despite the delay of the album's release, Springsteen and the band went on the road, along with several of the Asbury Park regulars as roadies.
Yeah, well, we played, oh God, that first year we went out, we were on the road constantly. We were playing 14 nights here, and then having 2 days to drive to Chicago, and then playing 7 nights there, and then we'd drive to Springfield and play 3 or 4 nights there, and then back to Boston, and then down to D.C., you know, and we were just constantly in the station wagon and the equipment truck. You know, so we got a dose of what it was like to be out on the road and staying in hotels, you know.
It was very different because in the old days with Tinker, Tinker was the ringleader. He was like, okay, follow me. You know, it was like we loaded up Tinker's truck, we followed him. You know, sometimes I would ride with Tinker, whatever. You know, it was always, Tinker was taking us around, you know, and he took care of all the stuff, found us places to stay, you know. He had the promoter, he had everything lined up. Mike Appel would send us out on these gigs, and we were on our own. You know, I mean, we knew where to go, but we had to find it. You know, we had to stop in gas stations and say, hey, do you know where this place is?
We were unnecessary. The only thing necessary was Bruce, you know, so we became, to him, unnecessary. And I didn't like that very much. And because the first night, I remember he whisked Bruce away and told us he was God. Mike Appel. He goes, from now on, I'm God. I say, you do. You know, and we're all sitting on the steps of this gym going, you know, and on the way home, I was thinking about it. I was crying. I was so upset about this now, because we went from making, we always, steel mill all the way till this point, whatever came in, expenses, here's yours, here's yours, here's yours, here's yours. After the expenses, if it was $5, $5, $5 at the end, that's what we got. But then Mike Appel took that away from us and says, you're not making anything now, the band.
It was tough on us because we had that family feeling with the band, and Mike didn't care about that. He didn't want to know nothing about that. He just wanted to know, you know, shut up and do your job. Go to the show and don't complain. And a lot of times, we had to, you know, pay our own way and then try to get reimbursed from him later. I mean, he sent us out on the road a lot of times with insufficient money to live on, or credit cards that would get taken while we were fueling up. You know, you can get gas at a gas station and the guy would take your credit card. You had to pay cash to leave. And so who had the cash? Me.
I called Bruce up that morning. When I got home, I called him up. I said, hey, you know, Mike, I mean, we were only making $35 cash. No, we weren't even making that. We were making, you know, less than that money. And then what happened was, after I called Bruce, he goes, oh, I didn't know Mike was going to do that. I said, yeah. And then the next week, they said, okay, you're going to make $35 cash each a week. Plus, they put us up in the hotels, you know, and feed us and blah, blah, blah. But $35 cash. Because I called Bruce up. I said, you know, because Mike just said we're going to make nothing. We can just go out on the road and they'll take care of us, but we're going to make nothing. I said, what if I want to come home? I can't even take my girl out to get a pizza pie. Go to the drive-in.
Yet the problems of the road were hidden from the journalists, who were instead discovering that Springsteen was far more distinctive than the numerous pretenders to Dylan's crown, and that he would perhaps survive these comparisons to become an artist in his own right.
Springsteen had that local identity. Once again, opposing him to Loudon Wainwright and John Prine, each of whom also did, but not in the same kind of specific, detailed way, and also not in the same kind of working class way, was an important reason for the excitement he generated. It was also useful that he wasn't from the South. It just made him different. There was no, I mean, as much as he loved rock and roll, there was no Southern folky, folk scene, that kind of man of the, Woody Guthrie style man of the people thing about him. He was another kind of man of the people that seemed, and I believe actually was, insofar as the term makes any difference, pretty authentic. In terms of a credible persona, a persona you could suspend your disbelief over, his New Jersey identification definitely gave him an angle and a leg up.
In April, while still touring, Springsteen went back to the studio. In the past year, he had recruited new band members David Sanctius on keyboards and Clarence Clemens on saxophone. Both Asbury Park veterans, they